you get one.
Yeah, kind of
okay.
like that.
What about you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely what?
Pay on the first date.
The guy should pay on the first date?
Yes.
Okay. What about you?
Yes, the guy should pay on the first date.
The guy should pay on the first date.
I don't think so. I mean, look, if they're asking for, they're like, I want to take you to a super expensive restaurant. I don't have the money for that. I'm going to communicate that. And if they're like, okay, then let's go somewhere cheaper, cool. That's fine with me. I don't care.
Okay.
But I will split.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
So if he's asking you somewhere expensive, then yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you? Who should pay?
Men.
Men should pay. Okay. Didn't you say you were a feminist? Feminist. Not a feminist.
50-50.
Hey,
Not
I
a
said
feminist.
split.
Feminist.
50-50.
Okay.
Well, I mean, split.
Here's another question that we can kind of figure out here. Should women be drafted? This is an effort to figure out if you
Yes.
guys are feminist or not. Should women be drafted in the military?
Like, by drafted, do you mean like when you turn 18, like you're automatically?
Okay, yeah, so
drafted?
men have to register for the selective service. Currently, there's not a draft in the United States, but all men in the United States at 18, in order to be able to vote and have other benefits, they have to register for the selective service, which would then make them subject to military conscription in the case that there was a military conflict which required a draft. So do you think women should be subject to selective service draft? Forced?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay.
I wouldn't even trust women to like fight for our country unless that's like that's their thing. You know, like if you're like that type of woman that you feel like you're stronger and stuff like that. But I just feel like no.
Okay. What do you think?
Well, hold on. So you think they should be drafted based on how they feel?
No,
About-
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if like willingly, if you just want to.
She's saying if they want to
No,
volunteer.
just really want to
draft,
volunteer.
though.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
they want to volunteer, yes.
Yeah, but then, yeah, this just defeats
Which
the
is-
purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. Well, that's what we currently have.
yeah, but I guess we should be drafted because I mean,
Okay. All right.
I mean, plenty of men don't want to join.
Okay.
Plenty of men, plenty of men, plenty of women. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
If we gotta do what we gotta do, I mean, yeah.
Now, here's the interesting thing. You guys both have different opinions on this. I still don't know which is actually like the actual feminist position, because we'll have feminists who will argue it's actually, we had one last week with Andrew,
Yeah.
who said, well, it's not equitable. It's not equity for women to be drafted. That's a whole nother thing.
Interesting.
But what about you?
No.
No? Okay.
No, women should not be drafted.
Should not be drafted,
No.
but they should be paid equally in sporting events.
No comment.
Okay.
No,
They shouldn't be drafted?
I don't think so.
Well, hold on.
Okay, so everybody except Anza
Yeah.
said women shouldn't be drafted, but y'all want to be equal? So wait a sec. How are you equal if the men are the ones that have to fight and die to defend the country? The men are the ones that build and maintain all the infrastructure, right? Like none of this stuff in the studio is built or maintained by women. Do you know that like 90% of infrastructure jobs are still held by men? And that if you look at the top 20 jobs held by women now in 2024 versus 1924 are almost the exact same. So women have had 100 years to do whatever they want, and they still do the same 20 jobs they did 100 years ago, other than we switched out farm labor for HR work. But other than that, we're secretaries, nurses, daycare ladies, early childhood education, administrative assistants, retail workers, all the same shit that we were a century ago. So if the men are the ones tasked with every time there's a natural disaster, they have to go out and rescue people from the fires and the floodwaters, and every time there's a war, the men have to go and fight it and defend the country, and anytime there's a criminal who needs to be violently arrested, it's going to be a man who goes and does that, not a woman. Where does the equality come in? If we're doing the fluffy jobs, you know, we're all singers, we got a lot of singers and musicians, which is cool, it's great, I love music too. But y'all ain't like rescuing people and you know, doing the heavy lifting or the dirty or the dangerous jobs. Like who collects the trash? Men. You know, who does all the steel working and oil rig work and all of the like sewer cleaning?
Heli
Men.
tower making.
We have a video on this, Rachel, actually. Nick, remember that video we were looking at yesterday? I think it might still be on one of the tabs. Let's watch this. No audio. No audio. Go ahead.
Oh, there's no audio on it.
Yeah, go ahead. Are you ready to work on an oil rig? All right.
Come
Those are
on, feminists, get in there. You
those
can
are
do
some
it.
roughnecks.
Come on,
That's
ladies. Anyone?
definitely not strong
Andrew had to
enough
do
for that.
stuff like that back in the day. They'd lower him
Underwater
into
welding, I
not
guess.
not
Or-
underwater, but they would lower him into these tiny little horrifically frightening spaces to do extremely dangerous stuff.
I'm claustrophobic.
I really feel like
Yeah.
women should just have the choice to do it if they want to, because I know some women that can handle it.
They do have the
Yeah.
choice, and they're
That's-
not.
They
They
doing it.
do, and they're not
doing it.
They don't
fine.
want to.
Well, I
this
mean,
this is
that's
the
fine.
big secret,
Yeah.
right? Is that women don't want to do any of this dirty,
So-
dangerous, scary stuff. They don't want to.
Well, yeah, but is that just, what we've been raised with, the culture
No.
we're surrounded by?
No, and I have data to back this up. So
Okay.
if you
Oh, is there more, Nick? Just let it play.
Yeah, we'll just let it play. So, back around the time of suffrage, we're talking like 1850s to 1920, roughly around there when the big suffrage movement was happening. Did you guys know that most women were completely against it? By all of the referendums that they would do where they would let women vote on whether they wanted to vote, only about 4% actually had any interest in voting. And they actually had really good reasons for this. There was much higher membership in anti-suffrage groups than pro-suffrage groups. And these groups would do public debates. They would do written debates, newspaper periodicals where they would go back and forth and debate these things. And the women who were against suffrage said, look, the primary purpose of government is to protect persons and property, okay? Why task women with that when we're not really capable of doing that, okay? We don't want to have to be drafted. We don't want to have to do jury duty. We don't want to have to be a political bloc, because back then women had advocacy groups for things they wanted, but they weren't a lobbying group. They didn't have like voting rights, so they weren't able to be as easily politicized. They felt like they had a moral high ground to ask for things like, we need more parks, we need better schools, we need clean air, whatever it was. And that if they became just another voting bloc, they would be involved in dirty politics, and they didn't want to do that. They felt like somebody has to be morally neutral and not involved in politics. So, given all of that, do you guys think that women can protect and defend persons and property?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
How?
well, first of all, I want to go back to the fact that for a long time, women weren't allowed to own property, or at least not without being married. And so,
Actually, it was the opposite. It was once you got married, you generally, whatever belonged to you belonged to your
sure,
husband,
but
same
then
kind of
usually the woman is still living with the family.
thing. Right,
and
but why would you? So think about
Yeah.
why.
Why would you wanna
do
live on your own?
Why do you think women didn't own property?
Well,
do you think it was just the patriarchy, like just
No, I'm
hated
not
the
saying
women,
that.
and
I'm
they
not
just
saying
wanted
that.
to put their boot on their neck and keep them down?
I
or-
generally don't think that.
Okay, what do you think?
I generally think it was just a matter of the times. Like, because it was, I mean,
So do you think there was a reason, though? Do you think there was a logic behind not letting
I think it
women own
worked for
property?
back then. I think it worked for what it is at that point in time.
No, I don't think you understand what I'm
Sure.
saying. So
Okay.
if you're a woman
Yeah.
and you own land and it's 1802,
Mm-hmm.
and bandits or cattle robbers or Indians come and they say, we're taking your land,
Yeah.
what are you going to do about it?
But that's exactly my point. That worked for that time.
Okay, what's different now?
We don't have that as much. I mean, it depends on the neighborhood, of course. I mean, it depends on the community,
Okay,
et
so
cetera.
if you own land now in 2024 and you have a squatter who comes and squats on your property and you need them removed,
I did
do
that.
you call ladies to come and physically remove them, or are there men who come and physically remove them?
So I had a subleaser who I needed to get rid of, and I did all of it. My landlord didn't do anything.
Okay, what'd you do?
I went to the court, and
Okay.
I got the papers. I took her to court. I won.
Oh wait, as a woman squatter?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, okay. But did you physically remove her, or did cops come?
Well, did she willingly, after the judgment from the court, she willingly left?
So, okay, the lease was up. She refused to leave. And so, I got the paperwork. I gave her the 3-day notice to vacate, which is the proper way to
Right, you're going through the eviction process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then, and she was still like, that's not right. It's totally illegal, even though I got it literally from the courthouse. And so then we're like, okay, let's get the proper eviction papers. Mind you, we still had the papers escorted by
Okay,
cops.
So did you both went to the court and there was like the eviction trial?
Yeah, and we did.
Okay.
Well, I mean, not the eviction trial.
So then-
So she did leave within the 5 days of receiving the eviction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But So let's say she stayed there, right?
Yeah.
Because I think this is what Rachel is getting at. Let's say she stayed there. You even won the eviction case.
Yeah.
The judge did an order. I don't know. Typically after the eviction, I think they have another period of time. It depends on the state.
Yeah.
It can be 10 days, 30 days, whatever it is. And then the cops will come after a certain period of time and then forcibly remove the person. I think what Rachel's trying to get at is
Right.
who's going to forcibly remove the person, whether man or woman, if they were even after getting a judgment from a court, they still refuse to leave.
Right. Okay. So in this case, because she left within the 5 days, I didn't have to have like the sheriff remove her.
Right.
But at least when I was giving the papers, the cops that were there were men and women. Yes, primarily men, but there were women. I mean,
Right,
who's to say
but-
there can't be more?
Well, you're talking about the process server. So you served her with the.
So it was my mother who served her, but because of the threats she was making, we had her escorted by foot patrol.
And that was not like a bunch of strong, independent women who marched.
It
her
was
out
a
of
man
there.
and a woman.
Okay. And if it had just been a woman, do you see what I'm getting at? Do you see like who defends our national borders? Not a bunch of feminists, right? The use of force is still always going to be men.
I mean, of course,
like when you come
men
down
are
to-
taller and bigger. Of course,
Yeah.
they're gonna have
No, you
that
didn't.
physical. Well, I always got it. I always
Right.
understood.
Right.
I mean, going back to the sports things. I mean, the men are gonna be able to do things that women just physically
Right.
can't. But
So when we talk about equality, the only equality women have is the illusion of equality granted to them and provided for them by men.
sure. I mean, that's why I think it depends on the context when it comes to equality. Personally,
But if you have to appeal to men and say, men, let us be equal. We demand equality. And the men go, fine, we'll enforce equality. Is that really equality?
well, that's why I think it depends on how it is being handled. Personally, I think
So it's up to the men, basically. It's always going to when
Well,
you get
because
down
they're
to it,
already
you have
in
the
that
men.
position. If we could flip it, and then they'd have to ask us, right? I mean, it's-
Okay. So you think we could put women on all the oil rigs, and we could put women in the Senate, we could put women in the military as generals, we could make them sheriffs, and that would work out fine?
yeah.
You think so? Okay.
I
so-
mean, well, here's the thing. I mean, okay. For example, I remember watching this one show. I think it was called Stars and Stripes, and it took a bunch of celebrities and put them in the position of military. It had men, it had women. The person who ended up winning was the skier Peekaboo Streets, and she was a woman. She beat out actually Sarah Palin.
that guy?